तो ये क्या ऐसे है कि हर एक मकाम के लिए वो जो दरवाज़ा है वो खुल जाता है ऐसे?
जिक्र से वो जो मखलूक है ना, जिक्र उन मखलूकों की तरफ करना, तो वो मखलूकें तैयार हैं, तो वो मखलूकें उधर दरवाज़ों पे जाएंगी ना,
वो खुद करें।
वो मखलूकें जिक्र कर, उनको सिखाया, वो भी तरीका और है ना।
That is another way. It's not a door as such. Those spiritual bodies are actually taught to chant the name of God. Just as at the moment we only talked about one spiritual body, just saying Allah, Allah. You have the other 7 sectors you have inside the body, the 7 spiritual bodies. They are all taught different chants. Through the chants, they are then fed with the light of God. They then leave the body and go into the different levels.
जिस तरह ये ख्वाब में देखता है, इस दुनिया में घूमता है, इससे वो जो ताकत पकड़ेगी ना, तो वो अपने मकाम पे जाएगी, उसको ये देखेगा।
Just as one spiritual body leaves your human body when you sleep, and you see yourself going to places in the world. In a similar way, the other spiritual bodies, when they are sustained by the light of God, they, in a similar way, leave the human body, and then they go into different places, but not into this world, in other realms.
क्योंकि जो हमने तरीका बताया, दिल का बताया ना, इससे आगे भी है ना।
At the moment, we've only talked about the heart, the one form of chanting, for one spiritual body. But there are other spiritual bodies and they have their own chants. There are different teachings for those. That's sort of first spiritual progress.
उसका ये आज रात को जिक्र करेंगे ना, बाकी बॉडियों का। ये आज के दिन करते हैं ना, रात को बैठ के 12 बजे के बाद बता दें, 12 बजे के बाद करते हैं। मतलब देखना चाहे तो देख रहे कैसे करते हैं, उनका इलादा जिक्र होता है।
Sarkar said that Rizwan at his home here will hold a gathering tonight for the other spiritual bodies, which is known as Mahfil Lataif. Lataif is the name given to the spiritual bodies plurally. The 7 Lataif, 7 spiritual bodies. That will happen actually at 12 o'clock after midnight. Should you wish to see how that happens, then you're welcome to come and see, sit and join. Where each and every spiritual body, we focus on that and do the chant verbally, and then try to get them to chant the same name, or different names.
वो वही करते हैं जिनका ये हो चुका होता है ना, इसके बाद वो दूसरा सबक शुरू करते हैं।
How we actually spiritually teach those people is first to start with the heart. When the heart is awakened and the spiritual body starts to chant the name of the Lord, then they progress and move on to the second spiritual body, then the third, and then the fourth. Progress this way. In effect, simply means we awaken each and every spiritual body slowly and steadily in each of different chants. Another thing that means is one day you might have one pulse here, so you got one spiritual body awakened. You might then find you've got 2 pulses, eventually 3 and 4, 5, 7, and all 7 are awakened and doing their chanting. That's what some people have called celestial music, because you feel it inside.
तो रूहानियत कोई बातों से नहीं, प्रैक्टिकल से रूहानियत होती है ना।
Spiritualism is not learned or obtained just by talking about it. It's experienced. It's done through practical means.
अब हम जो रूहानियत की बातें करी हैं ना, अगर प्रैक्टिकल ना करें बेकार।
Now we've talked about spiritualism, but if you don't take this on board practically, if you don't practice, then what we said is limited use. Yes, please.
I really like what you're saying about concentrating on the heart and opening your heart before you open any of the other centers. It seems very logical to me. I believe, as I've read, that Allah is masculine and feminine, that Allah is masculine and God is feminine, and then it's the union of the masculine and feminine. Is that right? Or is that
सरकार के दो सवाल हैं। सबसे पहले यह है कि जो आपकी तालीमात है, जो दिल के बारे में आपने फरमाया, मैंने कबूल किया और बड़ा पसंद आया। उसके बाद ये कह रही कि जो अल्लाह का नाम है उसमें उन्होंने कहीं पढ़ा है कि वो दोनों मुज़क्किर और मुअन्नस दोनों में उसमें पाए जाते हैं। अल जो है अल मस्कुलिन यू सेड,
I think all is masculine and all is feminine.
अल जो है अलिफ लाम वही कहती है कि मुज़क्किर रिप्रेजेंट करता है, और ला जो है वो मुअन्नस। क्या मुज़क्किर मुअन्नस दोनों में पाए जाते हैं, उसमें कोई ताल्लुक़ है उस चीज़ से?
मतलब वो दोनों के लिए है ना, मुज़क्कर के लिए भी मुअन्नस के लिए भी।
It is for the masculine and for the feminine.
It's the union of the two.
What Shah was actually saying that the name itself, they don't exactly say that it's a union of the two in the name, but what they say the name is for both of us, masculine and
यानी
feminine.
औरत भी अल्लाह कर सकती है, मर्द भी अल्लाह कर सकता है।
Man can do Allah also, women can do Allah also.
वो दोनों के साथ है जो उसके नज़दीक चला जाए।
And what matters to God is that whomsoever obtains His love and finds His proximity and His love, that's what matters to God. Out of the two, that is man or woman. So का सवाल ये था कि इतने मज़ाहिब क्यों हैं? ये बड़ी कंफ्यूजिंग बात है कि इतने मज़हब हैं, और इतने मज़ाहिब दुनिया में क्यों हैं?
मज़ाहिब तो कुल 4 है ना, बाकी जो है वैसे लग गए।
शाफ़िई,
नहीं, कुछ शाखें हैं, कुछ थोड़ा थोड़ा हासिल कर लिया, बस मज़हब बन गया।
There are 4 religions in the world, and what the remainder are sort of offshoots, if you like. Some are branches, and some have taken teachings from this part, and then made their own religion.
उन ब्रांचों में कुछ सही है, कोई गलत है।
Amongst those branches or offshoots, there are some who are on the truthful path and some on the misguided.
वो जो मज़हब हैं, उन मज़हबों में भी गड़बड़ हो गई, उन किताबों में रद्द-बदल हो गई।
Even in the 4 major religions, there is some mistreatment because the scriptures have been altered.
हाँ, तो जो सबसे आखिरी मज़हब आया ना कुरान, उसके मानों में भी रद्द-बदल हो गई।
And the last religion that was sent by God was in the Holy Quran, and even they've altered that, the people, the translation.
तो फिर अब जो गैर मज़हब जिस तरह अल्लाह को ढूंढ रहा है ना, इसी तरह मज़हब वाले भी अल्लाह को ढूंढ रहे हैं ना, किताबों में उनको मिल नहीं रहा ना।
Yes, God. Just as the people who don't have any religion are searching for God, in a similar way, the people who follow a religion, they are searching for God because they can't find God in the books.
क्योंकि जब वो बुक पढ़ते हैं ना, तो कोई क्या लिखता है, कोई क्या लिखता है, उनके दिमाग खराब हो जाते
Yes, God. Because those people who read the books, they read the books and then they discover that there are so many translations or interpretations of it, and they all get confused.
हैं। अब सब इसकी तलाश में हैं।
Yes, God. Now they're all in search of God. Yes, please go ahead.
Is there always, like, are there a number of spiritual masters in physical bodies that, is there like a constant number that always are on the planet to keep things?
In order.
Yeah.
सरकार ये पूछ रही कि क्या एक वक्त में एक मुकर्रर तादाद में रूहानी मुर्शिद और पेशवा इंसानी जिस्म के अंदर पाए जाते हैं ताकि दुनिया को के निज़ाम को कायम रखने के लिए?
फिर बताएं, दोबारा पूछे इसे।
सरकार करी क्या एक दुनिया के अंदर एक वक्त में एक मुकर्रर तादाद में लोग रूहानी पेशवा पाए जाते हैं ताकि दुनिया के निज़ाम को चलाने के लिए?
वो होते हैं 360 होते हैं एक वक्त।
Yes, at one time there are 360.
उन्हीं के तफैल जो ना ये दुनिया कायम है।
It is, as as a result of the 360 that on earth at one given time, that the order is maintained.
मुल्तान में एक वली गया रात को, जब उसने देखा ना लोग याशी में लगे हुए हैं, उसने सोचा ये गर्क हो जाएगा, आज ही मुल्तान गर्क हो जाएगा। तो सारा रात बैठ के गुजारी उसने, पता नहीं किस वक्त गर्क हुआ। बोले इसको।
There was a saint who went into the city of Multan, Pakistan. And they discovered that the inhabitants of Multan were engaged in unlawful activities, and they were really free, and there was all sorts of things happening. And then he decided or thought that Multan should no longer exist. And then he just sat down in the city in some dark corner and started to think, when will it end? When will it end? He should cease to exist tonight.
सुबह तक इंतज़ार करता रहा कि पता नहीं किस वक्त ये उलट जाएगा, लेकिन सुबह ही देखा कि कुछ लोग जो है ना वो अल्लाह भी कर रहे हैं। फिर उसने कहा जब अल्लाह करने वाले हैं तो ये अभी उल्टेगा नहीं।
He waited until morning, and then he discovered that the city still remained intact, nothing happened to it. And what he discovered early in the morning was that there were some people in that city who chanted the name of the Lord. Then he thought to himself, as long as there are some people in this city who chant the name of the Lord, it cannot be destroyed.
इसी तरह जब तक वो वली है ना इस दुनिया में, तो क़यामत नहीं आएगी।
In a similar way, as long as the 360 exist in this world and are present amongst us, the end of the world will not occur.
तो जो आखिरी वली होगा ना, उसका नाम इमाम महदी होगा। इमाम महदी की डेथ के बाद विलायत ख़त्म हो गई।
And the last saint who will arrive on this earth, his name will be the Mahdi. And after the Mahdi, the day of judgment and the end of the world will occur.
जब विलायत ख़त्म हो गई तो दुनिया भी ख़त्म हो।
And after the Mahdi, sainthood, the faculty of sainthood and spiritual guides will no longer exist. Then the third world war, the end of the world, and all these things will happen.
You're saying they will happen, or is it like something that there's possibilities and that we're kind of in, like one of the things that I've heard is that we're being judged now, that if the consciousness on the planet reaches a certain level, that this destruction won't happen, but if it doesn't, then it will, or is there like possibilities, or is it definitely that this destruction?
सरकारी पूछ रही कि जो क़यामत का बर्पा होना और जंग अज़ीम तीन और ये तबाही बर्बादी जो होने वाली है, इन्होंने ये भी सुना है कि शायद अल्लाह ताला इस वक्त इम्तिहान ले रहा हो और लोगों को दोबारा मौका दे रहा हो। क्या ये मुमकिन है कि सारी दुनिया के अंदर आलमी तौर पर लोगों का शऊर इतना बेदार हो जाएगा रूहानियत की तरफ और रुझान अल्लाह की तरफ हो जाए, एक मकाम पर वो पहुँच जाए वो शऊर, फिर अल्लाह ताला माफ़ कर देगा और ये तबाही नहीं होगी, सिलसिला जारी रहेगा?
नहीं, तबाही तो होगी ना, लेकिन तबाही का मकसद ये होगा ना, अगर इनको पता चल जाए हमने कल मरना, तो फिर भी ये याशी तो नहीं छोड़ेंगे ना।
Sarkar is saying that it will happen, it will occur, the death and destruction at the end. But what Sarkar also said, that if somebody discovers that they are due to die tomorrow, they'll still continue the way they are continuing, what really matters to them.
इनके सामने लोग मरेंगे, जलेंगे, फिर इनको इबरत होगी, ये खुद भी ढूले लंगड़े होंगे, फिर ये अल्लाह की तरफ राग़िब होंगे ना।
What the higher purpose of all the destruction may be, that when you see physically yourself that there's so much death and destruction and people are dying and maybe you'll be affected yourself and be incapacitated, and then your mind and all your energies and focus will be towards God, and you'll say, right, let's find God, let's find His love, let's find that refuge.
ये तबाही का मकसद है कि इन लोगों का रुख अल्लाह की तरफ।
And the purpose of the destruction and the calamities that are due to occur is that the whole of mankind will be led towards thinking about God and finding a path towards Him.
जब सारे अल्लाह की तरफ होंगे, सारे अल्लाह करने वाले तो सारे एक ही हो जाएंगे ना।
So when all of humanity or all people then look towards God, look towards the path which takes towards God and His love, then automatically they'll all become one eventually. That thing will unite them.
लेकिन उस वक्त फिर बहुत थोड़े होंगे, इतने ज़्यादा नहीं होंगे।
At that point, there'll actually be very few people left, not as much as there are in the world today.
Do you believe that this will happen in our lifetime, like some people do? Or is it something that no one truly knows.
सरकार ये पूछ रही है कि ये जो वाक़यात होने वाले हैं ये हमारी ज़िंदगी में ही होंगे कि वो ऐसी ये चीज़ है जो हमारे मरने के बाद होगी, दूर होगी।
क्या कोई आंखें देखेंगी,
जी सर।
ये आंखें देखेंगी, वो नज़दीक है।
Shasu said it's very close. You get ready for it because your eyes will see it. सरकार ये पूछ रही है कि कुछ तफसील से आप कुछ और बता सकते हैं इसके बारे में?
नहीं, हमको इतना पता कि बहुत जल्दी है, चंद सालों में।
सरकार said that it's very close, few years, within a few years time.
जिस दिन सांस फ्रांसिस्को डूबेगा समझ जाएंगे बस अब खत्म होने वाला है सब कुछ।
The day you see that San Francisco is submerged under water, then you must understand that everything is due to happen.
पहले तो भाई उधर से आएगी,
Because the destruction will start from San Francisco.
क्योंकि जो सबसे ज़्यादा गुस्सा है ना अल्लाह को सान फ्रांसिस्को पे।
Sarkar said that the anger that God has, most of it is directed at San Francisco.
वो औरतों को छोड़ के ना लड़कों को पीछे सब लगे।
Sarkar said that it is because of the gay community and the practices there that God is angry at Rasithi the most.
तो अल्लाह को ये पसंद नहीं है
And God does not like this.
कि मज़क्कर के
Masculine must be activated with masculine.
And what my feeling was that I believe that love was beyond masculine and feminine, and that if you truly loved someone, that it didn't matter what body their soul was occupied, if it was masculine or feminine.
So मेरी पूछने की इनका ये ख्याल था कि अगर यहाँ तक मोहब्बत का ताल्लुक है, इश्क का ताल्लुक है, अगर सच्ची मोहब्बत हो या सच्चा इश्क हो, तो फिर वो चीज़ तो उस चीज़ से बालातर है कि वो रूह किस जिस्म के अंदर है, मर्द हो या औरत हो।
वो जो सच्चा इश्क था ना वो ख़त्म हो चुका ना। वो कुछ लोग आए हैं, शीरीन, फरहाद, मिर्ज़ा साहब, लैला, मजनू, उनमें सच्चा इश्क था, लेकिन वो अकेले भी रहे ना तो बहन भाइयों की तरह रहे ना। बताएंगे
Sarkar said that truthful love and the truthful ishq that we talk about and the love that you mentioned, it did exist in previous times, and that they do give examples of couples similar to what we understand as Romeo and Juliet did exist, and their love was so pure that even when they stayed together they were like brothers and sisters. But that love does not exist anymore.
जब वो मरे ना तो उनकी कब्रों से दूध निकले ना,
कब्रों से ज़िक्र?
दूध निकले, कई कब्रों से दूध निकले, लोग लेके जाते पीते थे।
And when they died and they were buried, and from their graves they saw that there were fountains of milk sprung. People used to take milk from their graves.
उनकी सच्ची मोहब्बत थी वो एक वलायत का टुकड़ा थी ना।
Because their love was so pure and so truthful, it became a part of sainthood.
फिर उसके बाद मिर्ज़ा साहब आए और उनसे फिर गलती हो गई ना आपस में, उसके बाद वो सच्ची मोहब्बत ख़त्म हो गई।
Then a person known as Mirza Sahib came, who was also, if you could compare him to Romeo, had that love, and then he made a mistake in the relationship. And at that point, that true love ceased to exist.
अब तेरी किसी से सच्ची मोहब्बत है ना बहन भाई की तरह, फिर तो ठीक है ना। अगर बहन भाई की तरह नहीं है तो फिर वो सच्ची मोहब्बत नहीं, वो तो नफसानी नफ्स की मोहब्बत है।
Now if you love somebody, they're a female or male, love each other, they may love each other as a brother and sister. But if they do not love each other as a brother and sister, and then it is love of the senses, it is love of the ego, the love of the self, the love of the basic animal nature inside us. सरकार एक ख़ुसूसी तौर पर ये इन्होंने इस मोहब्बत का भी तज़किरा किया है, और एक जो अल्लाह की मोहब्बत है, तो फिर अल्लाह की मोहब्बत सच्ची हो, अल्लाह सच्चे अंदाज में मखलूक से मोहब्बत करता हो, तो ये मुज़क्कर और मुअन्नस का मसला ये छोटा सा है उसके सामने। फिर ऐसा क्यों, अल्लाह गुस्सा इतना क्यों है? जहाँ तक अल्लाह की मोहब्बत और मखलूक का मोहब्बत का ताल्लुक है, तो फिर जो लोग सैन फ्रांसिस्को में जो हरकतें कर रहे हैं उसको परवाह नहीं होनी चाहिए। तो छोटी सी बात,
छोटी सी बात क्यों, उसने मना किया जब इन चीज़ों से, छोटी बात नहीं है।
जी सर। From a second angle, to answer your question, Sarkar said that we talked about love of human beings. As far as divine love and what you were sort of pointing towards is concerned, Sarkar said that he has forbidden such acts, and it is part of his law that this must not be done. It is his will, and therefore when we go against his will and his law and his wish, this is why he's angry with those people. It's not just a question of his love, it's a question of his law and what he wishes.
I thought things such as anger only exist here, but on a level of God, but there wasn't these emotions.
सरकारी पूछने के मैंने ये समझा था कि जो गुस्से का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है वो सिर्फ ज़मीन पर है, जहाँ तक अल्लाह का ताल्लुक है उसको तो गुस्सा तो आना ही नहीं चाहिए, जैसे जब उस चीज़ से वो गलत है।
अगर अल्लाह को गुस्सा आए नहीं तो फिर ये दोज़ख वैसे तो हो ही नहीं ना।
Sarkar was saying that if he was not capable of anger, or this concept did not exist on a higher plane, then why would he create heaven and hell?
वो रहमान भी बहुत है ना, तो कहार भी बहुत है ना।
That he is very merciful also, and he is also has also the name and the quality of qahar, which means that he can become very angry and very bad.
एक दिन अल्लाह ताला ने इज़राइल से पूछा, जो जान लेता है, कि तुझे इतनी मौतें नहीं हैं, तुझे कभी किसी पे तरस भी आया है? उसने कहा एक बच्चे पे तरस है कि कश्ती पे माँ बेटा जा रहे थे, तो तूने हुक्म दिया था माँ को मार दे और बेटे को छोड़ दे। तो मुझे ये था कि वो चंद दिन का बेटा है, तो यहाँ तनाव वो क्या करेगा, उसके ऊपर मुझे तरस है, लेकिन तेरा हुक्म था मैंने माँ को मार दिया। बताएं।
Sarkar gave an example that Israel, the angel who takes life from the human body, God asked him one day that I've commanded you to take so many lives from people, to take their souls. Was there ever an instant when you took somebody's soul and you felt pity for them? And then he said, yes, on one occasion you asked me to take this soul from this body, and the soul belonged to, there were a mother and a small child on a boat traveling on water. And it was your command that I take the soul belonging to this mother. And I thought for a moment that indeed this will be a pitiful act, because the mother will die and will leave a small child in the boat. And he then took the soul from the mother. औरत का वो रूह कब्ज़ कर ली।
हाँ, और दूसरा उस शख्स के भी मुझे तरस आया कि जिसने नमरूद ने जन्नत बनाई थी, लेकिन वो जन्नत में कदम रखा ना तो वो मर गया, यानी वो उसको देख नहीं सकता। बड़े अच्छे में वो जन्नत बनाता रहा, अच्छे मकाम बनाता रहा कि मैं उसमें घूमूंगा, लेकिन वो कदम भी नहीं रख सका। दूसरा उसके ऊपर मुझे तरस आया, तूने कहा कि जब वो दाखिल होने लगा तूने कहा इसकी रूह कब्ज़ कर ली।
Israel then gave another example to God. There is a second instance that I felt some pity for the soul that I was due to take, was a person known as Namrud, that all his life he spent creating this paradise that he was due to go in. And as soon as he went in, he put his foot in there, and God commanded, you must now take his life. Then I took his life, but I felt pity for him.
तो अल्लाह ने कहा वो जो था मर्द जिसने जन्नत बनाई वो वही बच्चा था।
Then God said to Israel at that moment that that person who made the paradise, Namrud, was that son that was left on the boat.
तो वो कहार भी है, रहमान भी है, सारे उसकी सिफात हैं ना।
God contains all those qualities. He is merciful, He is bountiful, He is the possessor of all might and power. He is majestic, and all power belongs to Him. He chooses whatever He does.
तो वो जिन लोगों ने नूह अलैहिस्सलाम को नहीं माना ना, तो उनको उसने पानी में गर्क कर डबो डबो के मार दिया।
Those people that didn't believe in Noah and didn't go follow him onto the ark, the rest were all drowned. He drowned them all.
तो लूत अलैहिस्सलाम के ज़माने में वो नबी थे, ऐसे सैन फ्रांसिस्को किस्म के लोग थे, तो वो उनको समझाते वो नहीं समझे, तो फिर वो निकले शहर से, तो अल्लाह ने उनको गर्क कर दिया।
Similarly, the prophet Lut, at his time, there were people who engaged in gay activities, just as the people in San Francisco. The prophet Lut used to teach them and tell them to refrain from such activities. And then they did not listen, and Lut left the city. And then as soon as they left for the mountains, they took their people with them, and God destroyed the rest.
तो कुछ लोग थे जो मूसा अलैहिस्सलाम अल्लाह के लिए बात करने जाते ना, रास्ते में आग लगा देते थे, अल्लाह ताला ने उनको बंदर बना दिया।
And there are some people at the time of Moses, when Moses used to go towards the mountain to talk to God, they used to create obstacles and light little fires in the path of Moses. And then God changed them into bears. Yes, he changed them into bears.
तो शीश अलैहिस्सलाम को कुछ लोगों ने सताया तो अल्लाह ने उनको रीछ बना दिया.
Sorry, changed them into apes. And also give another example of Sheesh alayhi salam, another prophet. And then the people amongst that prophet of his time used to torture with that prophet, used to give them a hard time. And then God turned them into bears.
वो जो रीछ की जो नस्ल है ना अभी तक अफ्रीका में मौजूद है, उससे जो इंसान आए.
And at that moment in time when God turned those people from human into bears, those people are still here today. They're found in Africa.
क्योंकि जब वो रीछ बने ना तो उनके पेटों में जो थे ना वो तो इंसानी बच्चे थे ना, फिर वो वहाँ जाकर पैदा हुए ना.
Because those people that were turned by God into bears, those women that still had embryos and fetuses inside them, then when they gave birth, that the descendants then continued, and they resemble the bears in physical characteristics. Those people are still found in Africa.
वो अभी अफ्रीका के जंगलों में मिलते हैं, इंसानों की तरह होते हैं, जिस्म पे बाल होते हैं, उनको मम बोलते हैं.
क्या बोलते हैं?
मम.
Mum. Sarkar is saying that those people are known as mum, and they behave like bears physically. They have a lot of hair on their bodies.
Apes or
Bears.
bears?
इसी तरह कुछ लोग जो बंदर बन गए ना, ये तुम्हारे इंग्लैंड में आ गए, वो जो अंदर के बच्चे थे ना, तो ज़्यादा जो इंग्लैंड में कौम है वो बंदर की औलाद है.
In a similar way, those people that were changed by God into apes, many of the descendants of those people, or the biological descendants, so to speak, who survived the complete reformation, if you like, they survived and they are found in England.
अब वो खुद कहते हैं कि हम बंदर की औलाद हैं. हमने खुद देखा पहले बड़ा बंदर, फिर छोटा, फिर छोटा, फिर छोटा. वो खुद कहते हैं बंदर की
You
औलाद.
will recall Darwin's theory of evolution, and as far as science is concerned, that those people said that we evolved from the ape.
उन लोगों को हदायत नहीं है जो बंदर से आ रहे हैं.
उनको हदायत नहीं है इसका. Those people that are actually the descendants of the ape, there is no guidance of those people.
वो बिल्कुल हैवानों की तरह कोई ज़िंदगी गुजार के चलेंगे, मज़हब से कोई तल्लुक़ नहीं.
And they just will live like the animals and have nothing to do with God or religion. The point being made by Sarkar Shah Sahib is throughout time, throughout history, there have been those people that have listened to the prophets, who have listened to God and His commandments, and there have been others who tortured them, who went against them, who went against the message. They then left via the ark, or left through the city, went to the mountain, and the remainder time and time again were destroyed by God. So they were the enemies of the prophets, the enemies of God. And at certain points in history, they were people were changed by God through His own will and wish, which nobody knows, into apes or into bears or into other forms of animal forms. And there are still people that survived that, and still have similar physical characteristics.
अगर अल्लाह का गुस्सा ना आता तो ये जो मैंने हालतें बयान करी ये क्यों वाक़यात पेश आते हैं?
If God did not possess anger, if He did not become angry, why should He have done this? Sorry?
I never knew. I never knew.
और कहते हैं मुझे पता नहीं था कि उसने ऐसा भी किया.
Does I believe that there are beings, like some people say that, you know, Earth is the only planet that has beings and spiritual beings. Some people say that there are beings that are more spiritually evolved than us on other planets. Is what this is.
सरकारी पूछ रहे कि आप कुछ तस्करा फरमाए इस बारे में कि कुछ लोग ये समझते हैं कि जैसे हमारी ज़मीन है, जैसे चाँद, सूरज, मरीख पर और भी मखलूक़ें हैं, क्या वो रूहानी तौर पर हमसे ज़्यादा तरक्की याफ्ता है? उनमें रूहानियत ज़्यादा है हमारे मुकाबले.
वो साइंसी तौर पे हमसे ज़्यादा हैं.
Not spiritually more evolved, but scientifically they're more evolved and progressive.
So the spiritual ones would be on another plane of existence, not on a physical plane. Is that what you mean?
So God is saying that, say for example, there are other forms of life on Mars or any other planet, which there are. They are more evolved scientifically, far ahead of us in terms of progress spiritually.
हमारे अभी सियारे उन तक नहीं पहुँचे, वो नीचे हो कई दफ़ा चले गए, हमारे आदमी उठा के ले गए.
So God is saying that we actually haven't found the inhabitants of Mars. We cannot approach them, but there have been Martians who have come to Earth many times, long before we've actually reached there. And they've taken many of our people, human beings, back as well with them.
और जब उनके सियारे आते हैं ना तो वो शाम से चलते हैं, और हमारे ये पेट्रोल से जाते हैं. तो ये जब उनके पीछे लगते हैं उनको पहुंच नहीं पाते, गए भाग जाते हैं वो। उनकी
So
स्पीड
that's saying
तेज
that
है।
our aircraft run on fuel, but their means of transport runs on rays, electricity or the rays of the sun, if you like. It's much faster energy than when our people try to chase them or try to follow them up. They just disappear in an instant. They're unable to follow them. पूछा था कि किसी और मकाम पर ऐसी कोई मखलूक है जो हमसे ज़्यादा रूहानी
नहीं रूहानी, क्योंकि जो बड़े बड़े नबी हैं ना वो इस मखलूक में आए ना, इस ज़मीन पे आए हैं। उधर उनमें जो है ना उनमें छोटे छोटे।
Just to answer that question that you also posed about spiritual beings being more evolved than us on another plane, Sarkar is saying that all of the major prophets sent by God, they were sent amongst human beings on earth. This is why there's no other part of creation that are more spiritually evolved than us on any other plane. And on the other planets, there were prophets, but there were smaller prophets that were sent. The major prophets were sent to us.
ये जो कहते हैं ना कि 1.25 लाख प्रॉफिट है इस दुनिया को, तो 6,000 इस आदम को हो गए।
No, you said that there are 125,000.
हमारे से पहले इस दुनिया में क़यामत आ चुकी है, कोई भी नहीं था।
Closed his eyes and looked up, and he replied, Gabriel is not in the skies.
फिर बताओ, फिर उसने आंखें बंद करी, उसने दुनिया में भी नहीं है।
Then Gabriel said, tell me again. Child then closed his eyes again and looked everywhere, and he said, Gabriel is not in the world either.
फिर जबरील ने फिर किधर गया वो?
And Gabriel said, tell me where he is.
तो उसने कहा या मैं या तू।
And the child said, Gabriel is either you or I.
फिर जिब्राइल ने अल्लाह को बताया, पर अल्लाह ने कहा इनको गर्क कर दो पानी से, पानी के जरिए।
And Gabriel related this story to God. And then God then instructed that because they know so much, or they've achieved so much knowledge that they must be now destroyed.
ये बात उन्होंने सुन ली।
Just God. And then the whole world was taken over by water.
उन्होंने फिर लोहा पिघला के शीशे के मकान बना लिए।
This conversation between God and Gabriel regarding the knowledge and the ending of the world, the people actually overheard. And then they
शीशा और लोहा पिघला के,
then the people melted glass and iron and combined it and made homes.
क्योंकि जितनी देर में उधर से पानी आना था ना, इतनी देर में उन्होंने मकान बना लिए।
Just before the water was due to come to take over the whole world, the human beings all created their own homes out of this material.
ये उस शहर का नाम उस वक्त कालदा था, अब उसको यूनान बोलते हैं।
At that moment in time, the name of the city was Kalda. Now it is known as Greece.
यूनान। तो फिर ऊपर से पहाड़ों से पत्थर गिरे और वो सारे दब के खत्म हो गए।
And at that moment in time, there were stones which rained from the skies and everything was destroyed.
फिर जब ये आदम बनाया ना, तो फिर अज़ाज़ील को बोला इसको सजदा करो।
Then this Adam was created, our father. Then Azazel, the angel, was instructed to prostrate before him.
उस वक्त फरिश्तों ने कहा कि ये भी दुनिया में जाके उसी तरह दंगा फसाद करेगा ना।
At that moment in time, the angels again said to God that he will then go back into the world and create discord, disunity and trouble just as the ones before them.
क्योंकि उनको देखा हुआ था ना, तब कहा था ना।
Because the angels had actually seen the likes of the human beings in the previous Adam.
फिर इसको उतना इल्म नहीं दिया जितना उनको दिया था।
And thereafter, when this human race was made, it was not given the same amount of spiritual knowledge as our predecessors.
वो पता नहीं किस चीज़ से बने, फिर इसको तब मिट्टी से बनाया।
We do not know with what form they were made, but this is why we were made from dust and water and soil.
तो अब उसका सबूत है कि कुछ इलाके हैं ना, हमारे जो आदम है ना अब है वो श्रीलंका में उतरे, उनके अभी निशान मौजूद है उस जगह के। माई हवा जद्दा में आई, जगह महफूज है। बाकी नूह अलैहिस्सलाम की कश्ती वगैरह डूबी, उस जगह लोगों को पता है, किस किस जगह पता है, पता नहीं अपने आदम अलैहिस्सलाम से।
Now the various places, our Adam actually came down in Sri Lanka, and there are places, the places marked where actually Adam was descended. In similar way, Eve descended in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, and where she actually descended, the place is also marked. Similar way, where Noah and his ark were, some people also know the place where it was.
लेकिन कुछ मकामात ऐसे हैं ना तो जो खोते हैं तो पूरे शहर निकल आते हैं, तो उनकी तारीख नहीं है ना, वो पहले क्या था मैं ना। हाँ
And the Sarkar explained that there are some cities where architects and other people sort of dig deep into the ground and they discover whole new cities. Those are the cities that actually belong to that time before our era.
तब उनकी कोई तारीख नहीं मिलती
This
थी,
is why
पता
they
नहीं
cannot
चलता।
find any history relating to it.
सरकार आदम एक आए थे या उससे ज़्यादा आदम आए थे? उससे पहले जो आदम आए थे एक थे या एक से ज़्यादा?
कई आ चुके हैं,
कई आ चुके हैं?
14 का तो हमको पता।
The question asked was, Shah Sahib, that we have one Adam, which is our Adam, and the one we've talked about before him. Is it just one before him or many? And Shah Sahib replied that of those that I know, there are 14.
सरकार इसका मतलब है कि 13 दफे तबाही हुई है, 13 दफे तबाही हुई
ये जो आदम, ये आखिरी आदम।
And Dr. Sahib asked that means that the world has been destroyed 13 times over in the past. And Sarkar replied yes, and that this is the 14th Adam, is to be destroyed now for the last time. This is the last Adam.
So you're saying it will not be created again, this particular.
सारी पूछ रहे हैं कि ये दुनिया और ये निज़ाम दोबारा नहीं बनाया जाए।
क्योंकि ये आखिर है ना, इससे ख़त्म हो जाएगा सब फिनिश। ज़मीन से टकराएगी ना, ये सब नीचे ज़मीन में दब जाएगा, जिस तरह पहाड़ है उस तरह बन जाएगा।
So that's because this is the last time it will all cease to exist and will be complete devastation. When eventually what will happen, all the planets will crush into each other and nothing will remain.
हवा को बंद कर दिया जाए, ऑक्सीजन को, तो कोई रहेगा नहीं, ख़त्म।
And then oxygen will be turned off by God and everything will cease.
जिस तरह चाँद में पहले लोग रहते थे, ऑक्सीजन ख़त्म कर दी, अब वहाँ कोई रह नहीं सकता है।
Sarkar said that just as people used to live on the moon and God turned the oxygen off and all life ceased to exist. Now nobody lives there.
फिर वो दूसरा मकाम शुरू हो जाएगा ना, इससे जो ऊपर है दहशत का, दहशत दो।
And life will exist in a different way. And that will be above in paradise.
हाँ, वो हमारा पहले भी हम वहीं रहते थे ना, तो आखिर में भी उधर रहेंगे ना।
We lived there initially. We lived in paradise. And in the end we will all go back there again.
Shahi, you had mentioned that the moon is off of its orbit now, and so is the sun. Is this what you still see?
अगर ये पूछ रहे हैं कि आपने मतलब तज़किरा फरमाया था कि चांद और जो है वो सूरज वो अपने मकाम से महवर से वो हिल चुके हैं, वो अपने सर्किल पर नहीं, अभी भी ऐसा ही है।
वो नीचे आ रहे हैं।
Yes, they are coming down.
चांद जो है ना तकरीबन 40 मील नीचे आ चुका है।
God said that the moon has come approximately 40 miles down from where it was initially.
वो नीचे आता जा रहा है बस।
It is coming lower and lower and lower.
I keep hearing there's going to be a polar shift.
Sorry,
I hear about a polar shift that's going to change the planet and put us into the fourth dimension. Is this true?
What do you understand by the fourth dimension?
Well, what I keep reading about the polar shift has happened before and it's about to happen again, which will shift the planet
You mean-
on its axis.
Right.
Yeah.
You mean geological changes?
Yes.
सारे पूछ रहे हैं कि जो तज़किरा फरमाते हैं मतलब कि जो पहाड़ है वो शुमाल और जनूब में पोलर आइस कैप्स वो पिघलेंगे पहाड़ पानी के, और वो उनकी हरकत होगी, ऐसा भी होगा।
पहाड़ पानी के नहीं पिघले,
बर्फ के साथ।
बर्फ के पास है।
Yes, there will be some movement and those polar ice caps will start to melt.
ये सिर्फ इधर बर्फ नहीं है ना, उधर हिमालय की तरफ भी बर्फ है ना, रशिया में, चाइना में, उधर भी बर्फ है ना।
There's no ice around here, but there is plenty around the Himalayas in China and Russia.
इधर है ना तो ग्रीनलैंड में बर्फ पहाड़ जो है ना पिघल रहे हैं। हाँ, वो ग्रीनलैंड पहाड़ जिस तरह ग्रीनलैंड में पिघल रहे हैं ना, इसी तरह चाइना रशिया में पिघल रहे हैं।
Just as they're melting towards Greenland and above, they'll start to melt towards China and the Himalayas, which means that the polar ice caps will start to melt and there will be movement also. तो सारी ज़मीन हिलेगी इस बार उसके साथ।
ज़मीन उसके ऊपर है, पानी के ऊपर है, नीचे पानी है ना, इसके ऊपर ज़मीन रखी हुई है, जिस तरह कश्ती नहीं रखी हुई है, तो कश्ती को बैलेंस करने के लिए वो ईंटें वींटें रख लेते हैं ना, इसी तरह ज़मीन को बैलेंस करने के लिए पहाड़ बनाए हुए हैं।
Just as saying, the whole earth is composed of water, and then on the water is the land. And just as you balance a boat on water, God has placed mountains in various places to balance the land. का सवाल ये था कि क्या उस सारी ज़मीन और ज़मीन के अंदर का हिस्सा और पानी हरकत में आ जाएगा, सारा हिल जाएगा?
नहीं, वो ज़मीन पानी ज़मीन के ऊपर ही आ जाएगा।
Just as saying that not so much as the movement of the earth itself, but all the water will rise and just all the lands will be submerged.
I had heard that there was this shift would change our dimension from the third to the fourth dimension.
Yes. Be more precise, but I'm not. I don't know what.
Well, we're living in the third dimension right now.
Right.
And from what I have heard is the rumors that when this shift takes place, that everybody will be put into the fourth dimension.
Could I understand that as when this change occurs, the whole world will finish and cease to exist? Then will exist in another dimension?
Yes.
सरकार ये पूछ रही है कि ये हमने सुना है, पढ़ा भी है, जब ये तमाम की हरकत होगी, पानी उभरेगा और क़यामत वगैरह जंग अज़ीम 3, उसके बाद तमाम इंसानियत तीसरे से चौथे डायमेंशन में यानी किसी और आलम में चली जाएगी।
यही रहेगी। कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि उससे पहले लोगों को चांद पे बसा लिया जाए, लेकिन ऐसा नहीं हो सकेगा।
No, they will all remain here. There won't be a fourth dimension. There are people who are trying to make the moon inhabitable so people can actually move there before it happens. But everybody will remain here and be, in fact, be the subject of that destruction.
I have to ask a question about the saints. There's certain saints that if you visit their gravesite, you have a question in your heart, it'll be answered. Thinking of like Nirvana Jalani Rumi and Jalani and Hafiz and some other holy people. Is it possible, like through prayer, even if you're not at their gravesite, to commune with these people and get answers?
Sure. सरकार ये पूछ रही है कि क्या ये मुमकिन है कि कुछ मज़ारों पे जब आप जाते हैं, मौलाना रूम का इन्होंने तस्करा किया और गौस पाक का और एक और मज़ार, कि वहाँ पर जाएँ तो उनसे गुफ्तगू हो सकती है, अगर कोई सवाल हो, आपकी कोई हाजत हो तो वो कबूल करते हैं। और क्या ये भी मुमकिन है कि अगर मज़ार पर ना हो, दूर हो, कोई ऐसा तरीका है, कोई अमल है या कोई दुआ है जिसके ज़रिए से वो आपकी हाजत या दुआ सुन लें और कबूल कर लें?
पहले इन लोगों से मिलने के लिए बात अपने अंदर पावर आ जाए, नूर की पावर आ जाए, पहले तो ये है ना।
The first thing that we have to do, develop that power inside us, the power of that light, and then it is possible to do that. But that's what we have to do first.
फिर एक अमल होता है सूरत मुज़म्मिल का, वो 5 दिन पढ़ते हैं, 200 दफ़ा रोज़ पढ़ते हैं, फिर उसका अमल बन जाता है।
Then there is a chapter from the Holy Quran which is known as Surah Muzammil. Shahzad said that we have to read that for 5 days, 200 times a day. That you obtain power over this verse, and its qualities are contained then inside you.
फिर जिस मज़ार पे जाएगा ना, अगर मज़ार वाले सामने ही नहीं है ना, तो उस अमल के ज़रिए ज़बरदस्ती ये उसको बुला लेगा ना।
Then when you go to a tomb after you practice this, and then the inhabitant of the tomb, the saint, does not come before you, then actually you could close your eyes, and then through that power you received through this practice, you will be able to force the saint to appear before you.
फिर वो कितना भी बड़ा वली होगा ना, तो उसके ज़रिए उसको आना पड़ेगा इसके पास।
No matter how powerful or mighty the saint is, through that action that you did, the recital and the power that you got as a result of that, that saint will have to appear before you.
Which
That's known as Surah Muzammal. That is a chapter from in the Holy Quran. It's a few verses that you have to recite that for 5 days, 200 times a day, and that what is contained inside it, the light that is created, the esoteric and mystical dimension that has behind it, completely within your power.
उसके लिए इजाज़त देने वाला भी वली हो ना, पीछे हाथ भी वली का हो तब कामयाबी है.
And it's not sufficient just to take the chapter and verse and read it, but this has to be given from a saint. He has to permit you to do this, so that when you do it, he'll be watching over you and his hand will be over you and protect you in this way.
इसी तरह एक और अमल है, उससे आगे है, वो जंगल में बैठ के पढ़ते हैं, कब्र बनाते हैं, और जिस नबी की बनाते हैं ना, उस नबी को आना पड़ता है ना.
But then there is another action that we can do. For that you have to go to the jungle, and in a similar way to reading that chapter and verse, in the jungle we make a sort of imaginary grave of any prophet, and through capturing the essence of those verses, we are then able to call upon the prophet and let him pray before us.
उनके लिए फिर अपने अंदर भी पावर होनी चाहिए.
But in order to do this and to achieve this, we need to have this power inside of this light.
उसको इस्म आज़म भी बोलता है. लेकिन जिस्म आज़म होता है तब इस्म आज़म के काबिल होता है.
That is also known as Ism Azam, the mighty and the majestic name of the Lord, and which is the pure name. And to receive the pure name, we have to have pure body also, for the pure name to come inside us.
Surely, by that time, you could get your answer from God instead of trying to force saint or prophet.
So मैं पूछ रही कि क्या उससे पहले कि आपको वली या नबी को जवाब दें इसी सवाल का, क्या उससे पहले इतना जल्दी अल्लाह आपको जवाब न देते सवाल का ये बीच में अगर हम वसीलों
नहीं, कुछ नहीं, वसीला रखा हुआ. बगैर वसीले के नबी ईसा अलैहिस्सलाम पैदा हो गए थे, लेकिन बाकियों के लिए तो वसीला है ना.
Sarkar replied that this is the law of God, this is the way He does things, that He has created intermediaries for us. It was only Jesus that came into this world without the interaction or the help of Father, so to speak. For the rest of us, we do need a go-between.
इस तरह किसी किसी के साथ अल्लाह कर भी सकता है, लेकिन बाकी सब लिए एक वसीला ना ये लोग.
For some people, God may choose to do that. Before saying to the Prophet, replies or before you to do, He may to be direct and say, here, I'm God and this is your answer. But for most of us, we see that practically this is the way we have to have a go-between.
ये उसका कानून है ना, उसका आम कानून
This
है.
is His law, this is His common law, that we have to have a teacher, a guide, or some person acting between us and God.
कई लोग अरसे से जंगलों में बैठे रहते हैं अल्लाह को ढूंढने के लिए, अल्लाह नहीं मिलता. तो मूसा अलैहिस्सलाम आग लेने के लिए गए तो अल्लाह उनको मिल गया.
Some people spend their entire lives searching for God, and they go to jungles and don't find God. And same example Sarkar recited this morning. Moses went to find some wood for the fire. They went for the wood, they found God.
अल्लाह ने बात करी कि मैं तुम्हारा खुदा हूँ, डरो नहीं, आ जाओ इधर.
When God spoke to Moses and said that I'm your Lord, don't fear me, come here.
लेकिन सिर्फ मूसा से किया ना, बाकी लोगों से नहीं किया.
He only did this with Moses, not with everyone.
Well, I'd like to ask if it is possible for a person who practices faithfully and diligently to come into union.
Come into union.
Yes.
Practice is what?
Saying Allah in the heart and purifying the self.
Right, and we achieve union with God.
Yeah.
सारी पूछ रहे हैं क्या ये तय दिल से और मेहनत के साथ और कोशिश के साथ अल्लाह अगर की जाए दिल से तो अल्लाह के साथ एक हो सकता है, दीदार में वसल हो सकता है.
जब तक वो नहीं चाहे.
Until it is His wish. Only if God wishes so that can happen.
ये 3 चीज़ें मिलती हैं तो अल्लाह मिलता है.
So there are 3 things that combine, and that's how you find God.
सबसे पहले उसकी तरफ से मंजूरी,
First and foremost, his wish and will.
और उसके बाद फिर कोई उसके लिए वसीला,
And then an intermediary, a person who God has chosen to guide that person towards his essence.
वसीला वो जो उस तक पहुंचा हुआ हो,
A guide who is himself seen the essence of God, who is connected himself.
और तीसरी बात फिर मेहनत करे तो
The third is then your own personal efforts. The three things combined.
इन तीनों में अगर एक भी कमी हो ना तो फिर रात में मिलता
And
है।
out of the three, if there's one missing, you can't find God. Meaning his will and the perfect spiritual guide who is also connected himself, and then your effort.
So the perfect spiritual guide then would have also seen God.
That's exactly. So now पूछें कि जो मुर्शद हो, जो वसीला हो, उसने अल्लाह के दाद किया होगा, connected होगा।
तो वही अल्लाह तक पहुंचाएगा।
That is the person who can take you to God, who's achieved that state himself. The person hasn't been there himself, but how can he take somebody else there?
तूने एक पहाड़ी का रास्ता होगा देखा होगा तब मुझे पहुंचाएगी, और तूने देखा तू भटकती रहेगी, मैं भी साथ भटकता रहूंगा।
That's what I'm saying. You may have seen some mountain around the corner. You know the way, so only then you'll be able to take me. If you haven't seen the way, how will you take me there? We'll be lost. You'll be lost, and I'll be lost also.
That was why the other day I was asking about priests and ministers and so on who talk about God but have never experienced God. And that's like I think we're pointing at the moon and talking about the sun. They have experienced it, how can they take us to show?
सरकार ये कह रहे हैं कि ये वही चीज़ है जो मैंने दूसरे दिन सवाल किया था। कुछ लोग आलिम हैं या मुल्ला है या स्कॉलर हैं हर मज़हब के अंदर, तो अल्लाह की बातें करते हैं लेकिन अल्लाह तक पहुँचे हुए नहीं।
नहीं, वो इस तरह है ना, जिस तरह पूछे पहाड़ी की तरह, तो हम भी देखा नहीं है लेकिन बता सकता ना उधर है, पहुंचा तो नहीं है, बता सके उधर है, देख इसी तरह वो भी इशारा करता उधर है, तो चाहता तो नहीं है।
But in a similar way, right? Shafaq said that we can tell you about the mountain that there it is over there. That they haven't actually gone there themselves. In a similar way about God. So God is here, there, and everywhere. They have actually found God or been to God. Therefore, they are unable to guide somebody to God.
Are there lesser gods, like small g gods, that exist on different levels that people find that they think that they have reached the true God and saw God, and yet this was a cheap imitation, and that they have to then go beyond and say maybe they get stuck there because this lesser God gave the appearance of the big.
सरकारी पूछ रहे क्या कुछ ऐसे लोग हैं जिन्होंने रूहानियत में चलते चलते किसी मकाम पर वो रुक गए और वहाँ क्या कुछ खुदा और भी हैं जिन्होंने उनको देखा और समझ लिया कि बस यही खुदा हो सकता है, लेकिन वो हकीकत तक नहीं पहुँच सके। ऐसे भी लोग होंगे या ऐसे भी और कोई मकामात हैं।
ऐसे हुए
Yes, that is the case.
रास्ते में रुक गए वो।
That they, on that journey, they've stopped at one place and then realized that, oh, this must be God, but it wasn't.
So is that the job of maybe some lesser gods? Like, is that part of to strengthen us to know when we really found the true God? Or?
So that body, सवाल और जवाब अभी मुकम्मल नहीं हुआ। उनका ये कहना सकर क्या अल्लाह की एक ज़ात है, उसके अलावा और भी कोई छोटे छोटे खुदा हैं?
नहीं, खुदा नहीं है, उसके जलवे हैं छोटे छोटे, जो किसी नबी को कोई जलवा मिला, किसी को कोई मिला, वो उन जलवों से ऊपर है।
तो अगर उन्होंने जलवे देखे तो उन्होंने ये समझ लिया कि ये
यही खुदा है।
Sagar replied that many of the prophets have seen some of his attributes, some of the reflections of his true image and light, and they have then discovered that, or decided that this is God, when it was not the actual essence of God himself. But he is above all these things. But talk of lesser gods, they don't exist. There's only one God.
But I mean ones that pretend or think that they are. Do they exist? Like ones that pretend or think, like, in other words, they say that, like he was talking about Satan, it says Satan disguises itself as an angel of light. So
Right.
somebody may see this and think, is there also like lesser gods that try to convince God?
Some person on the spiritual journey may bump into somebody who may claim to be a God. सवारी पूछेंगे कि रूहानी सफ़र के दौरान सालिक को किसी मकाम पर कोई ऐसी चीज़ धोखा दे सकती है कि मैं तुम्हारा खुदा हूँ, मुझे मान लो।
बहुत सालों के साथ ऐसा हुआ है।
There are many people that have actually experienced this. At some time during their spiritual journey, they've stopped and then something has appeared before them and said, I am your Lord.
इस रूहानियत के लिए ज़रूरी है, हमारा एक वली सुल्तान साहब फरमाता है कि रूहानियत में एक मकाम ऐसा आता है कि आदमी कुफर के नज़दीक पहुंच जाता है।
One of our saints, Sultan Sahib, have declared that within spiritualism and the journey of spiritualism, one comes to a stage which is very close to disbelief, the opposite of faith, the opposite of believing in God.
अगर इसका समुद्र का इल्म सीखना ना तो पूरा सीखे, वरना किसी वक्त भी ये समुद्र में डूब सकता है।
Sarkar gave the example that if you wish to learn the knowledge of the ocean, you must learn the whole knowledge regarding the ocean. Because if you don't learn the whole knowledge, then at any point you can drown.
अगर इसी तरह रूहानियत में चले ना तो पूरा रूहानियत के इल्म सीखे, फिर इसमें चले, वरना किसी मकाम पे भी ये गिर सकता है।
In a similar way, if you wish to travel on the spiritual journey towards God, then you must seek the complete spiritual knowledge which will take you towards God. Not remain incomplete, otherwise you could fall at any time.
तो बहुत से लोगों ने रास्ते में गिर गए ना रूहानियत में।
Because there have been many people that have actually fallen whilst traveling on spiritualism due to one reason or another.
Shaheen, in so many places now, and they're making big crosses and big holy places, and people are flocking to these people now to be touched by the Spirit and by the light. They see her in the clouds, and they this is on TV just night before last. There's a big thing about this now. Is real. I mean,
सफाई पूछने के दुनिया के अंदर इस वक्त मुख्तलिफ मकामात के ऊपर लोगों को कुछ लाइटें, कुछ शबी नज़र आती है और वो समझते हैं कि माई मरियम की है, और बड़ी बड़ी सलीबें लोग बनाते हैं और दूर दराज इलाकों से वहाँ इकट्ठे हो जाते हैं कि हमें कुछ फैज़ मिल जाए, सुनते हैं कि माई मरियम है।
किस जगह?
Which place is this?
Well,
Which place do they see the image, or which place in part of the world that we are getting to?
well, there's
They've seen it in the tortilla, they've seen it in the shape of a branch. One lady was saying that she actually lives it,
yeah.
and they see it in the shape of a light.
she's appeared in Medjugorje, in what used to be Yugoslavia, in Scottsdale, that's out of Phoenix, in Georgia, in New York, in the Ukraine, in Argentina, Ireland.
मुख्तलिफ इलाकों में सगा यूगोस्लाविया, अर्जेंटीना,
मकसद ये है ना कि माई मरियम है ना, उनके अंदर की मखलूकें वो भी घूमती हैं दुनिया में, माई फातिमा की भी घूमती हैं, राबिया बसरी की भी घूमती हैं, और जो वलिया औरतें मर्द उनकी भी घूमती हैं। अब इन्होंने ना माई मरियम को देखा तो ना माई फातिमा को देखा, अब क्या खबर वो कौन इसको कौन देखा।
Sarkar replied that the spiritual bodies of Mary, similar way the spiritual bodies of Bibi Fatima, spiritual bodies of Rabia Basri, a saint, they're all amongst us. Various people at different points in their life in different parts of the world see these spiritual bodies. Now, because you have not seen the real Mary, the real Bibi Fatima, the real Rabia Basri, who's to say who this image belongs to? It may be attributed to Mary or Bibi Fatima or any other lady, because the spiritual bodies do exist and they are free and you can see them. And who's to say who this image belongs to?
इनके अलावा कोई और वलियत भी हो सकती है।
It could also be some other saintess. There are spiritual bodies that roam around.
They see them in the clouds.
बादलों में उनके साया कुछ लोगों को नजर आते हैं।
मतलब देखा तो नहीं है ना माई मरियम को इन्होंने, वो कोई भी हो सकता है।
What the point Sarkar trying to make is that because we have not seen Mary with our naked eye or in the flesh, it could be anybody. We don't know. But this does exist.
Yeah.
Experiences do happen.
Medjugorje has been going on for 16 years now, to 5 or 6 people. 16 years.
अगर एक इलाके का नाम बता रहे कि वहाँ ये वाक़या तकरीबन 16 साल से हो रहा है, ज़्यादा लोग देखते हैं।
नहीं हो सकता है ना, मरियम भी आ सकती हैं, दूसरी भी आ सकती है, अब ये पता नहीं कौन है।
Yes, this is possible. Could be Mary, could be somebody else, but we don't know.
औरतों को भी बड़ा मकाम है अल्लाह के यहाँ।
Because God ladies
इस रूहानियत में उधर नहीं, रूहानियत में बहुत मकाम है।
Not in any other meaning, but spiritual.
एक वाक्य है, बैठे हैं सुनने के लिए बस।
So I'm saying that you're not getting bored or anything, you continue to listen to that.
है इरादा सुनने का।
जी सर।
एक वाक्य है, खिज़र अलैहिस्सलाम बहुत पुराना वली है, वो बोलता है कि मैं एक दफ़ा बहर मुहीत के नज़दीक जा रहा था ना, मैंने देखा कि किसी के ऊपर लाइट आ रही है। मैं जब सामने दिया, वहाँ एक आदमी सो रहा था। वली के ऊपर लाइट होती है, मैं समझ गया ये वली है। मैंने उसको जगाया, उठ मेरी खिदमत कर।
Sarkar will give an example of Khizr alayhi salam, was a very, very old saint. And then he said that I was traveling towards this place and I saw close to an ocean, a man was lying. On that man was coming a light from out of the sky. And I thought he must be a man of God, so I followed his example.
तो मैंने कहा उसको, उठ मेरी खिदमत कर, और उसने कहा जा अपना काम कर।
And Khizr awoke this person and said, you must serve me. And this person awoke and said, go and do your business, leave me alone.
मैंने समझा शायद ये मुझे पहचान नहीं, तब इसने कहा ना जा अपना काम कर, वरना सारे वली मेरे मातहत हैं।
Yes, sir. And then Khizr thought, oh, he must not have recognized me. This is why he said, go and do your business. Because all the saints recognize me. And if he recognized me, he would have got up and served me. But he hasn't, this means that he recognized me.
खिज़र ने उसे कहा अच्छा, अगर तू मेरी खिदमत नहीं करता तो मैं अभी लोगों को बताऊंगा, बस्ती वालों को, कि ये अल्लाह का वली है, तो लोग तेरे पीछे लग जाएंगे।
Then Khizr alayhi salam said to this person that you won't get up and you won't serve me. So now I'm going to go into the people and tell them that you're a man of God. And then when I tell them this secret, they'll all come running after you.
तो उसने कहा ठीक है, तो जब लोग इधर आएंगे ना तो मैं बोलूँगा यही खिज़र है, लोग तेरे पीछे लग जाएंगे।
And then that person replied that if you do that and everybody comes running to me, then I will tell those people that you are Khizr, then everybody will start to chase you.
तो उसने कहा अच्छा, अब तुम बताओ मेरा नाम क्या है। खिज़र को बोला।
Then that person asked Khizr, now you tell me what my name is.
खिज़र बोलते हैं मैंने सारा आगे पीछे सारा इल्म लड़ा लिया, लेकिन मुझे इसको पता नहीं चल सका।
Said that I, through all my knowledge that I possessed, tried to check who this person was, but I couldn't find out who he was.
फिर कहते हैं फिर अल्लाह से मुखातब हुआ कि ये शख्स मेरी समझ में नहीं आ रहा।
Then Khizr said that I addressed God and said to him that I cannot understand this person. Who is he?
जबकि मैं सब वलियों का सरदार हूँ।
Because I'm the leader of all the saints, the seal of all the saints, so I can't understand this person. I can't recognize him. So tell me who he is.
अल्लाह ने कहा तू उनका सरदार है जो मुझे चाहते हैं, ये उनमें से है जिनको मैं चाहता हूँ।
And God replied that you are the leader of all those people that love me, and he is the head of those people that I love.
बेहतर है कि इससे दुआ ले और तेरे इल्म में इजाफा हो।
And then God said, it is best that you ask for his prayer with blessing, so that your knowledge may increase.
कहते हैं फिर जब मैं आगे गया एक पहाड़ी पे एक लाइट पड़ी थी, मैंने समझा यहाँ भी कोई वली होगा।
And then Jesus said that I continued in my journey past a mountain, and I saw there was light coming out from the sky, falling onto the mountain. And then I thought that maybe there was some saint sitting here also.
वहाँ देखा तो वहाँ एक औरत सो रही थी।
When I went there, I discovered that a woman was sleeping there.
फिर मैंने उसको पाँव से हिलाया, वो जागी तो कहने लगी ऐ खिज़र, तेरे वास्ते बेहतर था तू मेरे जागने का इंतजार करता।
Then Khizr took hold of the lady's feet and she awoke. Then she said to Khizr, oh Khizr, it was best for you that you did not wake me. You waited until I awoke.
तो खिज़र कह तू उसकी बीवी तो नहीं है?
Then Khizr said to the lady, I hope that you're not his wife, the one I met previously.
वो कह रहे हाँ मैं उसी की बीवी हूँ। तो खिज़र कह रहे फिर तू यहाँ कैसे आ गई?
And she replied that actually I am his wife. Then Khizr said, how you got here?
उसने कहा खिज़र बात यह है कि यहाँ एक अल्लाह की वलिया थी, यहाँ नंगी रहती थी, वो मर गई, तो मुझे हुक्म हुआ था कि जाओ तो जाके उसके ऊपर कपड़ा पहनाओ।
Then she replied to Khizr that there used to be a saintess, a person very close to God. She lived here, she was naked,
जब उसको कफन पहनाया ना तो उसकी लाश मेरे सामने आसमान पर उड़ना शुरू हो गई।
When I put the shroud and cloth over her body, I discovered that she rose and her body started to ascend towards the sky.
मैं सोच रही थी कि आज तक मेरी नज़रों से कोई वली ओझल नहीं हुआ था, ये कैसी ओझल हो गई।
Then I thought to myself, the lady said, to this date, I have not seen any saint or saintess disappear from my eyes. How did this lady disappear?
तो कहना खिज़र अब मैं ओझल हो गई, तू भी घबराना नहीं।
And then she said to Khizr, I am about to go as well, so don't fear.
तो खिज़र कहना आज तक मेरी नज़रों से कोई वली ओझल नहीं हुआ, वो औरत ओझल हो गई।
And then Khizr said that to this date, no saint disappeared from my eyes, went away, and she went.
अब उसका क्या मकाम था और जो उसकी नज़रों से ओझल होगी उसका क्या मकाम था।
Now, what was the station, spiritually speaking,